In this episode, we are going to be talking about putting guardrails in on certain key locations, potential problem areas on your railroad and why, and then and doing, I guess, track maintenance, setting up a schedule, that kind of thing. But then in the second half, we're talking about networking and reaching out and fellowship and stuff like that in the hobby. So let's get this show on the tracks. Welcome, Model Railroad Talk fans, to episode 86. We're getting up there in numbers, and this episode 86 actually is the last episode before Christmas. So those that celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Those that maybe don't celebrate Christmas, other ones, Happy Holidays to you. I hope all you have your gifts purchased or at least on the way. I know I've got all mine done, and I'm just glad I got them done. So this time of year, like we said in our intro, we're talking about, I guess, maintaining your track and a few things that you can do if you have special circumstances on your railroad. And this time of year, I would say probably no matter where you live, unless you live in an area that your climate, or not your climate, but your seasons are more or less the same all year round. You're going to experience this with track, and it doesn't matter how big or how small of a railroad you have. Obviously, the bigger the railroad, the more track there is that you have to maintain. But most of us, through our lives of owning a model railroad, we will experience track issues with, basically the rails expanding and contracting, and we've talked about that before. So, starting out is, are you maintaining your track? Get into the holidays, no matter what time of year it is for you. Here where we record in the U.S., which I think a majority of my listeners are from, we've got the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays and November, December. Then you get to start getting into summer where we have Memorial Day. Then we have the 4th of July a month later. And so it's easy to, I guess, forget about track maintenance, after, and especially, and it's not just the holidays. Okay. I guess I've got holidays on the brain because, when this comes out, we're only 4 days, 5 days, something like that from Christmas. Right. So, but it's easy though, no matter what, once you've got your track laid down and, things are up and running. And like for me, once I got my final yard, in a sense, piece of the puzzle, as far as track work goes, done, it's easy to say, oh, move on. Okay, well, I've got my track done. Now I need to work on electrical. I need to work on this and that. And time, time catches up to us in a sense. We lose track of time. It's easy to do with all the other projects, especially building a model railroad, to forget about track and what can happen, And this actually stems from here over the Thanksgiving holiday for us. The girlfriend's daughter and her son-in-law had come down and visited us over Thanksgiving. And so we came downstairs because my Casey's, I've talked about Casey's General Store. I talked about it, I think in the last episode, if I remember correctly, where I've got it set in place and stuff, and I actually got the lights hooked up and that kind of thing. And I invited them down to come look at the Casey's because that was the main thing, but then they wanted to see a train run around. So I'm like, all right, I haphazardly threw a train together and ran it from all the way from the bottom to the top. And I hadn't run a train the full length from one yard to the other, in a sense, in a point-to-point scenario in a while. And so, and our temperatures here have been fluctuating from like, the 40s down to single digits. We'll be single digits for a few days and then, into the 40s for a few days like we are, like right now when I'm recording this. And while, yes, it's in the basement and, our house is pretty well climate controlled, like most houses and most railroads are generally thought of being in the basement. The temperature stays pretty close all year. Yes, it does fluctuate. It will get warmer in the summer and cooler in the winter. But me running those trains around, running one train showed me, I've got a few spots in my track that, I've got to make some adjustments on. And one of those is on my lift out section. Okay, so on this railroad, not only do I have a swing gate, which is for the lower level, I actually have a lift up section, and I've talked about this quite a few episodes ago about Randy D, the gentleman who did my fast tracks. One of the guys that he's in this railroad group, used drawer slides, like for kitchen drawers, to make a lift out, and instead of using hinges and stuff. And I really like the idea, so that's what mine is. I've got a couple of hinges that I lifts up, and I can pin it to where it stays up and set it down. Well, most of the time it's in the up position. Well, I set it down and started running trains, and there was a couple spots where I had a couple cars that I now see they're on my injured reserve list, if you will, and I got to do some work on those. But it really hit me, or I really noticed it when the train was going across my upper level, across the lift gate. And I guess to back up a bit, anytime you have a spot like that, a lift gate, a swing gate, a complete lift out, however you have it built, that's an area prone for track movement. Okay. You see it less where on your main railroad. It doesn't matter if you glue or spike your track down. We've talked about that. But in those places, there's issues. So, obviously, we've talked about this before, but you get it. Heat and cool, affects the rail, which it's metal. It's going to do that. Metal, what they call in the metal industry, breathes based on, it breathes, I guess is the best way to put it. Anyways, with heat and cold. So anyways, I had this one spot where I got to looking, and the track had moved. Well, fortunately, I was able to make a few adjustments on the track, but the actual base for it, because my spacer blocks, or alignment blocks, I guess is a better term, they had I don't want to say they moved, but they had adjusted to the temperature, and they dropped down. And so anyways, I had a derailment there, and I've never had a derailment there. And so I got to looking, and after they left or whatever, I got to looking and running train back and forth. And I'm like, why am I having this issue now? Well, I'd figured out, first of all, like I said, my alignment was off. But when I built both my swing gate and my lift gate and laid the track down and cut the track, I knew that I wanted to put guardrails in, okay? Kind of like the railroads will do over a long bridge. They'll have those guardrails, guide rails. rails just inside the other ones that help kind of keep the flanges straight, that little added protection. And that's what this is all about, is being able to put those in. Don't be afraid to put them in if you have, say, an area that is a trouble spot, and especially in an area where there's a swing gate or a lift gate. Because I see it in a lot of groups where guys are like, well, I just got my lift gate in or swing gate or whatever. And, and they talk about all this time that they put into aligning the track and everything and the gates so everything works. And that's fine. But most people don't really think about putting those guardrails in. They're real easy to do. And in fact, if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a video up of how I install them in mine. Now, I have some, I've got them installed around or completely on my both gates, okay? But I'm redoing them because of the first batch I did, I thought would work, but it's not working to its fullest. So, but putting those in, it's not really that hard to do, and it's something that if you have spare rail laying around, remember along several episodes ago, I've talked about if you're tearing up track, and redoing an area, and if you have track that, okay, the spikes are popping off or everything, I'm sorry, not the spikes, the ties are popping off and everything, and you think, okay, I'm not going to be able to salvage this, save your ties. You can always use those for something else. Save your rails. You can always cut out the bad spots. That's what I did. I had several turnouts a few that I bought used, and when I started trying to work with them, they were literally falling apart. So I'm like, you know what? I'm saving the rails. I'm saving the points, that kind of thing. And I'm using the rails for those. And they're real easy to do. It doesn't matter if you have a curve or a straight spot through. We're going to use, my lift gate as an example, because my track through there has actually got one side it's got a slight curve and the other side it's straight. And you take those guardrails, and of course they're a little bit of work. It's not just as simple as cutting them to length, putting them in there, and cutting the split so you can lift or whatever, swing your gate. But I use simple I use a special glue, and I explain that in my YouTube channel, and I glue them down, and it's just that little bit of extra reassurance that if there's a spot where maybe it's just a few cars, or maybe one particular locomotive that likes to derail at a spot, why not try to put a guardrail in, just even in that one spot? You put them on for both tracks, put it in there, try it. That may be something that, those guardrails may be all it needs. Just those particular locomotives or cars, they're popping off and they just need that guidance, that little bit of guide for the flanges. So, but anyways, that's something to think about is, guardrails. They're most commonly thought of for going over bridges and stuff like that, but it doesn't hurt to put them in places that, where they're actually will be used. Yeah, they're being used on a bridge, but other places on your railroad, and like I said, lift gate, swing gate, any kind of where you're pulling the track, moving the track, to get in and out or whatever. Or maybe you have a 4x8 layout and you've got a lift up or a lift up staging yard that lifts up or attaches to it, where those tracks meet. You can put them in there. It all is to help maintain and, I guess, guarantee, or really not guarantee, but just that extra thing that you can do to help try to ensure good operations. Because the last thing we want, and I felt embarrassed going back to, her daughter and son-in-law when they were down. I kind of felt embarrassed because I hadn't set up a train. I didn't think they'd want to see a train run, and then all of a sudden I'm kind of put on spot like, oh crap, if I would have known, now I know the next I'm going to be set up for when they come down for Christmas. I'm going to be set up I'm going to have a train set up and I'm going to run it once or twice before they show up, just so I know it works. But putting those guardrails in is a good way to, and it's not unprototypical. Granted, you don't want to do guardrails around your whole entire layout because that's not prototypical, but certain spots, it never hurts to have that added, well, I don't want to say protection, but added support, if you will. So staying on lift gates and swing gates and stuff like that. The other thing too, and we talked about that at the beginning of this, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but going back on the regular maintenance, the other thing that I had found was I was running a couple locomotives back down to my lower yard, and actually the train that I'd run up, I was running it back down, and I get to the upper lift gate and I figured that out, and it went across that smoothly. And then I get, it makes its run around, goes down the decline, and there's one spot on my swing gate, which is my lower gate, that it's weird because I got to looking at the rails, and it's only one set of rails because my lower swing gate actually has two sets of rails. One is, in a sense, one is for the either continuous run, or it makes it when it's making its second run around to get to the outside track to go to the upper level. And then it has the track for the upper level that it's going to. Well, that particular track that's going to the upper level, I happen to notice on the swing side, like where it swings away, that the rails were awfully far distance. Okay. I kept them with tolerance. I mean, the gap that I had was basically, I had a grinding wheel for my Dremel, just one of those cut off wheels, the small ones. It was basically the gap of that on both sides, right? Once I laid that down, because I didn't want a huge gap, but I knew I needed a big enough one so when you open the gate, the rails wouldn't catch. And so I'm looking at it, I'm like, that seems awful big. Well, fortunately, when I was running the train back down to the lower staging yard, the train went across it okay, but it didn't like it. The wheels were hitting pretty hard, and it was making lots of noise, and I looked, and the gap was definitely wider there. So then I looked on the other side, and sure enough, there was barely a gap there, and I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here. So I started looking, and come to find out, the rails had slid, from the heat and cold and just the expansion and contraction of the rails. So I was actually able to take one of the rails relatively with ease, get it slid back where it needed to be. Now, mind you, I did use super glue when on my lift gate and my swing gate on both sets of rails. I went along the rail web and like where the spikes are, and put the liquid super glue, and I put it along there just to try to help, I guess, see if it'll maintain the rail alignment. And it did for a while, but I think with the cold, it just it shrunk or whatever it does so much that, let's face it, super glue is brittle. So not only that, but after I got it realigned, I have the other side of the track, because it's Atlas Code 83 Flex track on that portion, that one side, it's I don't know what they use, but you can barely move it. I mean, I tried moving it, and I think I got to move a little, but I don't want to also mess up the rail and this and that. So what I'm probably going to end up doing, and there's nothing wrong with this, and I'm sure there's going to be people out there say, oh, just rip it up and replace it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's a continuous thing, and I don't want to continually be ripping up the rail and replacing it, because it's not just a matter of replacing the piece on the bridge or on the gate. To do it properly and get it in proper alignment, you have to run it into the actual run it basically as a one piece onto the main layout, and then you go and cut your gaps, and it's, otherwise you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get the rails to line up properly. So the other thing that I have to do, which I'm planning on doing a video, I don't know when I'll do a video of this. I need to get the guardrail video. Well, it'll be done by the time you hear this, but soldering a piece of rail, basically attaching a piece of rail on the short side of that section or that piece of track to span that gap a little more. And then once I get that done and everything's lined up, then I can go and trim the other side of it where it's getting close, if not touching the other rail. Some people are going to say, no, don't do it that, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you I have successfully done that on a couple spots already. And is it a permanent fix? Where I've done it already, I haven't had any other issues. I can say that. But on the flip side of it, there's still chances of the rail sliding and stuff. The other thing that you can potentially do if you are running into something like that where your rails are sliding with the temperature, and I do this no matter what by those gates, but I take PC board, I get PC board ties, and right by the edge on both sides of where that rail splits that gap for your actual gate or lift gate, whether it's lift or swing, and I'll solder a couple PC ties, the rail to it, put my split in, and by doing that, and then I'll actually put spikes through those into the road bed and whatnot, and that kind of helps keep it from flexing, but it's not perfect, right? Let's face it, it's only solder holding it. Yeah, it's going to be better than the plastic spikes that are on the track, but you still take the chance of that. But that's the other thing you could potentially do is solder. Yes, it sounds, if you're not good at soldering, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend practicing doing this before you actually do it. But it's something that potentially can be done. You just have to get the right piece, get it soldered, get it prepped. As long as everything's prepped and you're okay with soldering, anybody can do it, adding a piece on, and I've done it. And actually on this railroad is the first railroad I've ever had to do it. And so far the two spots that I've done it at, I haven't had any issues with. So obviously somehow I did something right. But overall, with what all this we've talked about in this first half, though, is it basically boils down to don't let complacency ruin, you running your trains. Getting complacent with it, okay, the track's done and I'm not having any issues, that doesn't mean that eventually you potentially could have issues with the track. So keep on it. Set up a schedule to inspect your track, including your turnouts, for proper gauge connections, and alignment and everything. And make sure your throw rods on your turnouts are moving smoothly and the points are setting properly, because it's easy for, a little piece of ballast that, maybe somehow, some way came loose or, to get in there. And now all of a sudden it's blocking a point from completely touching and you're derailing. So, you would have to come up with your own schedule based on the way your trains run for you. But I would recommend setting up a schedule like, you know, I would hope you'd be doing for your rail cars and your locomotives, like the real railroads do, of setting up some sort of schedule to go and check your track and make sure things are still doing well, you know. Um, and I know it's not the most fun part of the hobby. I mean, some people it might be. I know for me, you know, track maintenance, you kind of think like, well, this sucks. I just laid all this track down and now I got to go back and do maintenance. And actually, right after you lay track down is actually probably one of the most important times to do track inspections and maintenance, because from the time you started till the time you got done, depending on how big your railroad is, the stuff you started with may have adjusted, and it's better to catch it now than to catch it down the road after scenery and ballast and all that, because once you start getting ballast in there, it makes it a little bit tougher to you know work with and realign stuff, because now you're into, well, I need to take some of this ballast out and make my adjustments, and then now you got to relay ballast in that area. And if you're somebody like me that while I'm not going to say I completely discourage putting ballast down, I'm it's not one of my favorite parts either, so but yeah, overall though, keep an eye, do good track maintenance, set yourself up a schedule just to go. It could be something as simple as, okay, like when you check your smoke alarm batteries, okay? Okay, spring and fall. That's when the temperatures seem to, change, fluctuate the most, off and on, up and down until it gets into the regular climate for that season. Do it twice a year, make it, set up a schedule, go check it out. While you're checking out your track, check out your guardrails. Don't hesitate to put guardrails in places that you potentially could see issues, like I explained with my lift gate and my swing gate. Those little things add up over the whole entire railroad, and it doesn't matter how small or big your railroad is. You have those derailments and track issues and stuff like that, and it can take the fun out of running the railroad. And like I said, I was embarrassed to run the trains for her daughter and son-in-law just because I wasn't ready. And I mean, I was excited, and then I had a few issues, and I was embarrassed because of it, because it's like I've spent all this time, and here I'm this big train guru, and I'm thinking, the outsider, okay, well, I expected it to run better. So that's part of the model railroad revolution is, we have to do our part to make sure those that are not in the hobby, and when we have the opportunity to show those that are not in the hobby that things are running perfectly. But on the flip side of it, it's also not bad to let people see that, look, this isn't perfect, and we have to do regular maintenance, just like the real railroads do, So something to think about, just because it's the holidays. Most people either they get to work on their railroad more, or some people a lot less, and some people it's the same all year round. Fortunately for me, generally speaking, it's the same all year round, other than like with us with the cold variations, and the cold where it's warmer and then it's cold. That tends to physically wear me out, especially with my job. But I still try to take every opportunity I can to come down and work on the railroad and shoot YouTube videos and stuff like that. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back shortly.
Are you searching for high quality yet affordable wood structure kits? Look no further than Mud Creek Models. They produce high quality HO and N scale wood structure kits and details. Check them out at www.mudcreekmodels.com. That's MUDD creekmodels.com. Or you can find them on Facebook. You will not be disappointed.
Are you interested in operations? Are you new to operations? Are you a seasoned operator? Consider joining the Operations Special Interest Group, or OPSIG. The OPSIG is an organization dedicated to operations from the experienced operator to the novice. Their principal purpose is to discuss, develop, and disseminate ways of operating model railroads to realistically emulate practices of the prototype. This includes sharing information on various methods of generating, moving, and controlling traffic to heighten the feeling that our models are an active and integral part of the national rail transportation network, serving shippers and consignees throughout the nation. Their membership is a tremendous resource to exchange information and ideas and to develop improved ways for hobbyists to learn the art and science of operating a railroad in a particular model railroad. Their quarterly publication, The Dispatcher's Office, is another great resource. It's loaded with articles about operations including paperwork, planning, execution, and hosting of sessions. Annual membership is only $10 per year. Membership includes 4 issues of the Dispatcher's Office e-version, access to their Dispatcher's Office archives, an industry database to help add realism to your operations, and a directory of operating layouts across the country. If you like to operate or are just becoming aware of this exciting and growing part of the hobby, this is the place. All are welcome. You can find them at www.opsig.org. That's www.opsig. We are back from break. Yes, we are. So for the second half, and I know I've touched on this, but it is the time of year where a lot of people will, for their children or even for their personal use, they will go and get train set and you know, whether it be for just around the Christmas tree or they, or that's the, initial intention is just to have it around the Christmas tree. But maybe the bug strikes you and bites you or whatever, and you are, you start getting interested, but wondering what is around. And I'm not going to dive in. I've already, an episode or so ago, I've already talked about, before you go and buy a train set, some things to look for and think about and whatnot. But let's just say you are past that and you are now, we're just a few days from Christmas. And, it's one of them things that you're interested in it, but maybe you're not sure where to go. Yes, there's YouTube videos, there's podcasts like mine and other great podcasts, audio podcasts out there. And like our YouTube channel, we're working on that more and trying to make it more friendly, more appealing, that kind of thing. But let's just face it, sometimes you need that one-on-one interaction with other model railroaders, right? That's, while as an example for me working on this railroad, my biggest issue is finding the time with my schedule for work, which isn't a bad schedule by no means, but the schedule for work. And then I have my regular, duties outside of work. Plus I have the podcast, basically Model Railroad Talk Productions. So it is difficult to try to find the time to not really model per se, but or build, but to reach out. So, you still need to find that and get that interaction, So what I would recommend, and if it's something that you are, I like this, let's say you bought the train set for the kids, but you like setting it up and you've watched a few YouTube channels, you're listening to this podcast, this is your first episode, we'll say, reach out to, look on, Facebook or some of these different groups, social media for clubs. Reach out to maybe some clubs. Doesn't mean you have to join them, but reach out to them. Find out when their next open house is. Try to, make not really friends, but at least acquaintances with some of the members of that club. Go to train shows. reach out, introduce yourself. Trade shows are a great way to, they're not just for buying and selling stuff, right? It's a great way to network with other model railroaders who may be in your area, or it may be a distant area, but still, it's good to be able to reach out and talk to somebody, bounce ideas off. Prime example is, because of this podcast, I have gained several, I would call, friends from this hobby, and in the hobby from this podcast, me producing this. Benjamin's one, Eric is one, Steve is one, and a prime example. I had a very long and very enjoyable conversation with Benjamin, not that long ago, talking about his railroad and some of the things that he found out about what he's modeling. I'm not going to tell you. Because I'm going to have him on here hopefully fairly soon for an episode again, and let him tell you what he found out, as far as his prototype that he's modeling. But we had a great conversation. The conversation included talking about his information that he found out as far as prototype and what his idea of potential plans are. We talked about DCC systems, and I gave him some ideas, some things to think about when he's looking at purchasing one, because he's looking at converting from DC to DCC and potentially doing LCC, which is layout command control. But find a way, to reach out. Find out the NMRA, National Model Railroad Association, is another excellent resource for that. You can join the NMRA and get involved with your local division. You could get involved with the region, because they're broken. You've got the national, then you got the region, and then, or regions, I should say, plural. And then you've got divisions amongst those regions, and reach out to them. Join the NMRA and reach out and find like-minded model railroaders out there. If you're stuck on a puzzle like I was a few months ago, I got the rest of my bench work done, and I was kind of stuck with my final yard. I felt like I was overcomplicating it. So I reached out to a fellow member of our division, and he was more than happy to come over and give me his ideas. And in turn, his ideas were excellent. I took his ideas and used them. And, being able to reach out and just, even if it's not talking about model railroading, a good example of that is Eric O. We've had him on here before. He's building the 1-inch GP60M Santa Fe. And I should say 1-inch scale. It's a big one. But, we don't always talk about model railroading. We become friends. We talk about other things and stuff like that, but it's just nice being able to have the ability to talk with other like-minded modelers, and that's the one thing. If you are new to the hobby, or even thinking about coming into the hobby, look and see what's in your area. Do you have a hobby shop? If you have a hobby shop in your area, go visit it on as much of a frequent basis as you can. And it doesn't mean you have to purchase something every time. Obviously, if I had in my area a decent hobby shop, I should say, when I say that, a decent hobby shop that sells a good, I guess, stock of model trains, okay, I would frequent it. I would love to have, like, what we used to have, your Midwest Trains. I miss that shop, because it was something that, I don't have anything going on. I don't really need anything, but I'd like to go down, and I just want to talk trains, and you could go down there and Buzz, the owner, that the former owner of it, you could go in and just, BS with him about stuff and other modelers and get to know the people, even if you never talk to them outside of the hobby shop. Just the interaction, it's a good way to, if you are already in the hobby, to keep that, like we've talked before, model railroad fire burning. It's a good way to do that. But if you're thinking about coming into the hobby, or you are new, you already took the step, but you're still new to the hobby, it's a great way to get your fire burning and get ideas and if you're unsure how to do something, there's lots of ways to do different things in this hobby. And that's what is so awesome about this hobby is there's not just one way to do things, something as simple as, bench work. You would think, okay, well, you build a frame, put plywood on top, and that's it. Well, there's a lot of other ways to build bench work, and to achieve different effects, and you can achieve the same effect as somebody else by building your bench work differently. It's just in all how you do it. And that's what's so great about this hobby. Like I said, if you're listening to this and this is your first episode, and I recommend going back and listening to, I will say 1 through 4 or 5, they were kind of iffy. They were just the very, very beginning. It was before I had the setup that I have now. But obviously, this podcast has advanced as far as the audio and stuff like that because of equipment I've had to buy. But check out other Model Railroad podcasts, Around the Layout. That is another very, very good podcast. Ray over there, he's got some great information and great bunch of guys that jump on there from time to time as guests. There's a lot of other great podcasts out there, but reach out. I know you can reach out to us, ModelRailroadTalk@gmail.com. If you have a question or you just want to talk about trains, we can do that too. But the biggest thing is if it's a hobby you're interested in joining, or you have gotten into, whatever, there's several outlets that you can go. I brought up the NMRA as a great way to get into that. And let's face it, maybe you don't have an active division in your area, but if you join the NMRA, and I did this several years ago, a long time ago, we didn't have an active division, but I reached out to the NMRA and said, hey, here's my membership number. I'm interested in, getting the division going or whatever. Can I at least get a list of names and contact of people that are NMRA members in my area? And we all worked together and got the division going, and it's still going to this day. So, get involved in that way. Get involved in however you can and help keep the hobby alive, but also spread the word about model trains. Yeah, you're going to have people say, oh, you play with trains. Well, yeah, I do. Why not? There's other worse things out there, worse hobbies that we could have, so, don't be afraid to reach out, because that's what this hobby is that's part of what this hobby is all about, is fellowship and trying to better our modeling skills, but also get to see other cool things by reaching out and seeing other model railroads that other builders have done. Just seeing that can give you inspiration. And the other thing too is this hobby doesn't need just to be about you. Let's say you're older, your kids are older, and they're, high schoolers or out on their own or whatever. It doesn't need to be just about you. If you have a spouse, significant other, whatever that you are with, if they're interested in it, maybe they're not interested in it the same way you are. Prime example, my girlfriend, she's not interested in the building or the modeling per se, but she's flat out said, she wouldn't mind coming down to run trains. Obviously I have to play her conductor because she doesn't understand the way I guess the operation side of it. But as time goes on, she'll be down here more and more because I'm starting to get to that point with the Iowa Eastern that I can actually start doing operations. I'm actually at the point where I'm finding the little pieces of track in a sense that need to be fixed, repaired, whatever, I have issues with, and getting those taken care of. But another prime example is with the with this podcast and Model Railroad Talk Productions. I've had her been telling her about, okay, well, I have this or this, I have this idea that this idea didn't take that long when I recorded it. And now I have to come up with a second half for, say, the audio podcast, the second part of that episode. And it's, she'll be like, well, have you done this? Or what about something like this? And that's coming from somebody that really hasn't ever had or has, I want to say zero interest, but very little interest in the hobby. And that is another way that helps me. And by her giving me that outsider's point of view, it helps me create content and stuff like that. But it also helps me with my modeling of, okay, how is, I'm building my railroad, and yes, I'm building it in a sense with what I know. I know what I wanted to do, and I know that more experienced modelers and operators can come down, and once I explain it to them a time or two, they're going to understand it. But she helps me keep it in perspective of, what if I have somebody like I'm talking about reach out to me that is just getting in the hobby and has never actually operated, and they and I invite them over. How is my railroad going to be welcoming for them? And so never underestimate reaching out to people that are not in the hobby. Obviously you have to have some sort of communication with them and a good communication with them to be able to do this. You can walk up to a stranger and talk to them about model trains, but it doesn't, and it may turn out good, but it's always good to get an outsider's point of view for when you're building. Like there's a couple guys at work that once in a while, they'll ask me about it. I'll show them pictures of something that I've done, my Casey's that I'm working on and I'm getting farther and farther along, show them pictures of that. And, just the expressions you get from that is awesome. And we've talked about that before, about, the model railroad revolution of reaching out to somebody who is not a modeler, and once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever you feel comfortable with, and just seeing the reaction on their face, But yeah, if you are new to the hobby or thinking about getting the hobby, and you're where do I go? Okay, I bought my first train set. I'm not sure, other than putting it around the Christmas tree or building a 2 foot by 4 foot or 4 by 8, depending on what scale you purchased. Where do I go next? You can reach out to us here, modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us through our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, our TikTok channel. We've got several ways for you to reach out to us. We'll gladly answer any questions that we know, and if we don't know something, I know we'll get you directed in the right direction, at least, of somebody that can answer a question that we may not know. Going on to that, here's another example of why this hobby is so great. I am going to be trying to make my own sculpt-a-mold. And you heard that right. Yes, sculpt-a-mold. I've been looking at, and I'm not trying to make this in to the hobby is so expensive. You got to make your own things, but it's just something that, I have looked at the price of it and for what you get and everything. I got thinking, well, maybe if I make it myself, I can make it more or less on demand. I don't have to worry about it going bad or making sure the bag is sealed up. If I have the components to where I can make it when I need it. And I'm planning on doing a YouTube video of it. Once I try it out a couple of times, I got to make sure I can get it down because for our YouTube side, I don't want to misdirect you, but I'm kind of excited about that because I'm actually at some parts of the railroad, the Iowa Eastern. I am at the point where, okay, I could be putting some sculpt mold down and start actually putting some actual scenery in, and I need to find time to finish up my background buildings and stuff like that and actually start building some of my structures that have been piling up. But things like that, if you like the hobby or you're interested in the hobby, there's so much more than just laying track down, putting scenery on, and running trains. There's so much that you can learn. We've had Rick Watson on here a couple times, and I'm sure we'll have him on here again, talking about operations and talking about the Operations Special Interest Group. If that's something that you may want to do down the road. We just had Hopedale Shops on here. He was Kevin Gallagher talking about what he does over there, and we're hoping to get him back on after the first of the year to maybe give you guys some tips and stuff on painting and detailing and stuff. So we're definitely looking forward to that. But just the networking is the biggest thing with this hobby. You can go at it all alone if there are some lone wolves out there that they just this is how they learn to do something, and this is the only way they want to do it, and they only want to run their trains for themselves. They don't care if anybody comes over. They don't want anybody over. And that's fine. If that's you, then there's nothing wrong with that. I think for the most part, most model railroaders at least want to have a little bit of fellowship and the networking and stuff like that as far as the hobby goes. So, all right, I am off my soapbox there. This episode's probably going to be a tad shorter, not by much, but I've talked about it. If you are interested, please head on over to our YouTube channel. Look us up over there, Model Railroad Talk. We are trying to better our videos, and I think what we've been doing is doing well because we've gained a lot of subscribers and lots of views. So thank you to those that have, went from listening to the audio podcast and went over to YouTube to check it out. So you can hit us up through there on YouTube. You can message us on there. Obviously, you can email us. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, modelrailroadtalk@gmail.com. You can go through our website, www.modelrailroadtalk.com, and reach out to us through there. You can reach out to us through TikTok, also our Facebook page. If you go over there to Facebook, look us up, Model Railroad Talk, and you can message us through there. You can post on our page. You can post pictures of your railroad and stuff like that. Just give us a like and subscribe and whatever all these different programs or whatever apps want you to do to all that good stuff. So thank you for listening, and for those of you that celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and those that don't, Happy Holidays from us here at Model Railroad Talk. So until the next time, keep your train on the tracks.